Hello everybody, good morning and welcome to the United Stand. This is your latest Manchester United news as we discuss some rather big topics on what is a match day as well. We've got, ready to turn. Manchester United players ready to turn on the board and back Erik ten Hag. Is this a good or a bad thing? This is coming from David Ornstein. We'll talk about that. We'll also talk about this story from last night when we were live, where we heard that potentially Manchester United could be a target for the Emirates Group. Who are the Emirates Group? How much wealth would they have? Would they realistically want to buy Manchester United from the Glazers? We'll be talking about that. We'll also be talking about the Europa League. We're playing in the Europa League tonight, but have you seen the list of clubs we could be playing in the Europa League knockout stages, or even worse, in the playoff that we could be in if we finish second? We're not just talking Barcelona, we're talking Juventus, Atletico Madrid. The sheer quality of names dropping into the Europa League suddenly makes it very, very difficult. And I'll be giving you my prediction on what I think is achievable for Manchester United this season. And of course, the De Jong thing is an undercurrent in that. So lots to get into in the show this morning. I am feeling slightly better. I'm sounding better than last night. So not quite better yet, but thanks for all the lovely messages on the video I did last night. It's lovely to know that people actually care as much as I care about you, which is not a lot. No, I do. I do care. You know I do. Anyway, let's get into the show. So, look, I want to hit this head on. I thought it was a very interesting comment from David Ornstein. So he was talking to Gary Neville yesterday, and he said that this is from David Ornstein, his direct words. I was being told by people close to the club and the first team that if players are going to turn on anyone this time, it's not going to be the manager. Are they going to go above and they're going to go throw executives under the bus? I don't know, but it won't be Erik ten Hag. So that's coming from David Ornstein, who's one of the best journalists in the UK as far as I'm concerned, and I think many of you as well. So when he is saying stuff like that, the way that David Ornstein works, he's not a speculation journalist. He doesn't just come out with things just to get a little bit of a click. We'll talk about the Europa League in a minute. But look, when David Ornstein says that, you know, he's hearing from people close to the club that the players aren't going to turn on the manager this time, if they're going to turn, they'll turn on somebody else. I mean, that's good. It's good, but I'm just going to hit this straight away and say, and do you want me to applaud the players on that? What you've got to remember here is that the players should not be turning on anybody at all. You're not fans of the club. You are paid very, very good money to perform on the pitch, and that's your job. If you want to be a politician footballer, that's absolutely fine. But being a politician footballer isn't just going, we won't turn on this manager, we'll turn on the board now. Why didn't you do that a year ago, 2 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago? You know, leave it to the fans, I would say, to the players, because you ain't politicians. And if you were, there's been plenty of opportunities to turn on this board. You've got people protesting now. Manchester United Supporters Trust are doing a legal action, which they've announced this morning, to go against Chelsea and Fulham Council in relation to the ticket allocation reduction for the away game at Stamford Bridge in a couple of weeks, which is a disgrace and treats football fans like cattle. Basically saying we're reducing the ticket allocation for the Chelsea game, even though we've given those tickets out, because we feel that there might be some public order issues. So Man United fans get a reduced ticket allocation, treating fans like shit. Manchester United Supporters Trust, I applaud them on that, actually, you know, putting forward a legal challenge. So, look, football fans are the life and soul of Manchester United Football Club, and you know, fair play to David Ornstein for saying it, but actually I'm going to hit it in a different angle. You know, I've heard people this morning going, yeah, good on the players. They're not going to turn on Ten Hag. They're going to turn on the board. They shouldn't have been turning on Ranić. They shouldn't have been turning on Solskjaer. They shouldn't be turning on Mourinho, because they're not fans. They're paid to play for this football club. That means you're paid to play for this football club. Focus on your performance on the pitch. Couldn't give a toss about your political views on what Manchester United's all about, because you've missed the boat on that. All we want from our players is for them to play well on the pitch. And you know what? When I hear that players won't turn on the manager this time, they'll turn on the board. But come on, you're the worst set of players we've ever had in the Premier League last year. Fans were turning on you. You've got to look at, all the players need to do is focus on their own performance as a collective like they have been this season. Forget getting involved on whether you're going to turn on the manager or not. And look, it could be a throwaway comment from David Ornstein. It really could. But it ignited something in me. I don't want political football players at Manchester United. I want them to focus on their own game, consistency, and leave the politics to the fans. Leave it to the board, not the players. You are paid footballers to wear a Manchester United shirt and perform well week in, week out. When you've mastered that, then maybe master being a politician in a football club. But you're not mastered that at the moment. Focus on that. So look, I don't necessarily take it as a big tick in the box that these players aren't going to turn on the manager, because they have turned on a manager in the past, which I think is disgusting. And also, if they are going to turn on the board this time, maybe they should have done that after the Super League. Maybe they should have done it last year. Maybe they should have done it in January when they didn't get players. Like, I'm not interested in what the players want to do. Some of them are paid 200-300 grand a week. They were very, very quiet when the Super League happened. They were very, very quiet in the summer. They were very, very quiet last year when it was a shit show. They fell out with each other. So for me, leave that stuff to the fans, because the fans are the ones that, you know, have been doing this month in, month out, year in, year out, saying the Glazers out. I've never heard a player come out and say Glazers out. And until they... Look, if Bruno Fernandes or Marcus Rashford or Cristiano Ronaldo or Harry Maguire wants to come out on Twitter and say Glazers out, yes, I'll have a bit of that. We could do with a bit of that, but they'll never do that. So that's my point, really. I'm not anti the players. What I'm saying is, hearing that these players aren't going to turn on the manager this time, they'll turn on the board. Turning on the board means putting a tweet out saying Glazers out off your socials. Do that, and the fan base is yours. But you're not going to do that, are you? So realistically, I don't want to hear about who you're going to down your tools for this time. Don't down your tools at all. In fact, the simplest thing at any football club is just don't get involved in the politics. Don't get involved in the Glazer out movement, and don't get involved in manager out movement. Get involved in being the best version of you, because that's what we pay you for. What do we pay any Manchester United player for? We pay them to perform on the pitch. If you want to perform off the pitch on your socials, that's up to you. But perform on the pitch. Simple as that. I've got a cough now. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. I've seen a lot of people getting... I was doing so well. I was doing so well. And now I've gone and got a cough. Oh, it's the second phase after a cold. I'm going to struggle this morning now. It's going to get tickly. I need to compose myself. Cough bridge. Can he recover? Is it now going to stay with me? Tickly. Can he come back? Can he come back? Sip of water. Yeah, so effectively, that's where we're at with this. I think that all I want from these United players is for them to perform on the pitch consistently. I don't want to hear about whether they're going to turn on a manager. I don't want to hear about whether they're going to turn on the club. We pay them good money to perform on the pitch. That's it. That's it. And ultimately, I just want them to back Erik ten Hag. That's all I want. Get behind man. Basically, as a footballer of Manchester United, listen to the fans. You know, listen to the common voice of the fans. And what I mean by that is the percentage voice. And the percentage voice of the fans wanted this manager, and they want the players to give and live and breathe and sweat, tears and blood for that shirt. That's all I want from that. I don't want politics. Just don't get involved in it. Simple as that. Sorry. Phase 2, the cold spreads to the chest. Yes, this is looking like it's going to be it. I need to be very, very careful today, because we've got the watch along later on, and that's 3 hours of streaming, which I might have to duck out of. We'll have to wait. Sammy says, I'm selling a throat mark. Doesn't have a British accent now. Imagine if you could borrow a voice. Look, you know, I felt a lot better this morning, but it's very different to having conversations with your family and friends to, you know, doing a live stream, which is obviously very intense. So, yeah, we'll see how we go. We'll see how we go. But look, that's my initial thoughts on that. I think the players are doing really well at the moment. They're responding to Ten Hag, but I don't really want to listen. I think as Man United fans, we're tired of listening to what the political angle of these players are. And when I say politics, I'm not talking about the NHS or, you know, house prices or, you know, train cancellations. I'm talking about football politics. And I think footballers stick their nose in things that really they don't need to get involved in. What they think... They will never come out and say Glazers out. And if they're not going to do that, just get on with playing for the club. That's what we pay you for at the end of the day, isn't it? God, this is really irritating. It wasn't like this. I've been ambushed. I've been ambushed on stream. Odds on Rashford getting his PR team to write a short story about Glazers out, says Tyler. I mean, I'd love him to do it. I'd love Rashford to do that. But he won't do that because he's paid by the Glazers. I will say this to you right now. There is no Manchester United player that will come out and say Glazers out. And I would applaud it if they did, but they will never do it. They will never do it. All we heard from the Super League was that some players like Luke Shaw, I think Bruno Fernandes, were very unhappy about how the club had put themselves in the Super League. But none of them actually said anything publicly. So, and they will never say anything publicly because they are paid by the Glazers and they're probably in breach of contract. So this is what I mean. Man United players should just keep their gob shut and get on with playing football because they're never going to get involved in the big issues. I mean, Gary Neville's probably the biggest politician footballer there's ever been. He never said anything about the Glazers when he was a player at United, and he didn't say anything about the Glazers for a long time after. And he's admitted that he probably should have done, but to do it when you're a player under contract is very difficult. I'm boarding a 5-hour journey on the National Express from London to watch Man United for the first time. Oh God, Abdul, I hope you recover very soon. I don't know where this is worrying me now. It's got this chest thing's got literally just come to me now. Don't worry about a watch along, mate. Go rest up, says Shahir. Yeah, it's just been a cold, and now it's gone to the chest, which is really it's not going to go away, is it? Take a break, Mark. It's yeah, I might have to. We'll have to wait and see. It's frustrating though, because I don't like sitting around doing nothing. Anyway, that's what I think about the players thing. Let's move on to this Emirates thing. I just want to get through the news. So the Emirates thing was last night we were talking about the Glazers putting a value on the club of 10 billion, I think it was, or 7 billion. So that's a lot of money. I think the fact that they're looking to do that means that maybe that the club is potentially for sale. There was talk about I think it was the Daily Mail mentioned that the Emirates Group might be interested in buying Manchester United. Now, the Emirates Group, I was in the actual article itself, which is not an article, I think it's actually a tweet from a Daily Mail journalist. He's saying that Manchester United, the Emirates Group may be interested in buying Manchester United, but he puts their wealth value at 16 billion. Now, if you look at the wealth value of PSG, Man City or Newcastle, you're talking hundreds of billions of pounds. I mean, 14 billion pounds is a lot of money, but if you want to buy Man United, if your wealth is 14 billion, that's not going to touch the sides. 14 billion, you buy Man United for 7 billion, that's half your wealth gone, and then you need to invest a lot of money in the club as well. So, it just shows you, 14 billion of wealth makes you very, 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 very rich. But it probably doesn't make you rich enough to buy Manchester United. So, yeah, it's interesting. Ricardo says, you look deficient in certain vitamins, Mark. Maybe need a blood test. God, I love this self-analysis. I'll be diagnosed with some serious illness in a minute. I've just got a cold that's gone to my chest. So, yeah, look, that's that story. I don't say I don't do anything for you. Emirates Group, whether it's true or not, they don't have massive amounts of money. They really don't. And as Mandy said, Sir Jim Ratcliffe definitely can't afford it. So, we'll have to wait and see. I do think the Glazers are looking to sell. We'll just have to wait and see how that develops, I suppose. But, yeah, it is interesting, and we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. The next thing I want to talk about is the Europa League. Now, I've got a tweet about this. Really, really interesting. Make sure you smash a like on the video and subscribe, by the way, bottom right-hand corner. Apologies for the cough. I wasn't coughing all morning. The problem is when you do a live stream, you're talking constantly, and I suppose it's just irritating my throat and causing me to cough, so I apologise for that. But we'll battle through. So, the next thing I want to talk about is the Europa League. Now, a lot of people, I think when we talk about Manchester United, and I mentioned this last night, when it comes to top four, I don't think we'll get top four. I want us to get top four. I think we can get top four, but I'm realistic to the fact that I worry about the depth of the squad. I worry about the quality of the squad comparable to other teams, and also the fact that the club is saying that they're not going to buy in January. I think when you combine my concerns with the depth of the squad, my concerns with the quality of our squad compared to others, and where we are in our rebuild compared to others. Arsenal are 3 years ahead of us, Man City, Liverpool, Chelsea, that they've got better squads, etc. And also the fact that other teams are going to buy in January and we might not. I therefore think that it's very difficult for me to put us in the top four when I put Man City and Arsenal there, Chelsea there, and I think we're battling for fourth with Spurs and Liverpool. So I think we'll do very well to get top four this year. I hope we do, but I think we'll do very well. If we don't get top four, we're not in the Champions League, are we? So the only other option is the Europa League. Now, when you look at the Europa League, you've got, obviously, Arsenal are in the Europa League. We know some other teams that are in the Europa League that are difficult. Now, if we finish second in our group, we have to play an extra game, which is an extra Europa League knockout game against the third place Champions League team. If you finish top of your group, you skip that. You play 2 games less. We're currently second in our group, and we're probably going to have to beat Sociedad to get top of the group in a few weeks' time. Now, sometimes the third place teams that drop down from the Champions League aren't that good, but the current teams in third place, so if we finish second, we would have to play one of these teams. These are the current teams in third place in their Champions League groups that could drop into the Europa League. So not only do they make the Europa League stronger, but we might have to play one of them in that extra game. So you've got Ajax, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, Sporting, AC Milan, Shakhtar Donetsk, Sevilla, Juventus. That's 8 teams, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8. So not only would we have to play one of those teams in the knockout group, in the extra game if we finish second, they're all going to drop down potentially into the Europa League. So I know I'm trying to think who's in the Europa League at the moment. That's difficult, but I think Roma are in it. Europa, I think, Arsenal are definitely in it. But Ajax, Atletico Madrid, Barcelona, Sporting, AC Milan, Shakhtar Donetsk, Sevilla and Juventus could all drop down into the Europa League as things stand at the moment. And therefore, is the Europa League an easy thing for us to win? And, you know, my point is not to be doom and gloom, because I think we can all predict what's going to happen with Manchester United. Mark, we'll get top 4 our managers. Brilliant, says Ketz. Welcome to Members Club, Renate. Oh, sorry, Renate's just gifted 10 United Stand memberships. Thanks for that. But I think it is very interesting, because the Europa League is going to be difficult to win. And Simeon says, I think the turning on the board is an excuse from the players for poor performances. Well, you know what? I suppose the interesting thing is the players can turn on whoever they want, but what did the fans turn on last year? They turned on the players. So, yeah. But look, I think the Europa League will be very difficult to win. I think we can beat Juventus, Sporting Lisbon, Sevilla. I think we can beat a lot of those teams, but it's relentless. You know, if we finish second in the group and we have to play, you know, Barcelona, it's not just beating them over 2 legs. The next round might be Ajax, and then it might be Sevilla. It's looking like the Europa League could be very, very difficult to win for Manchester United. So, you know, I don't see how we challenge for top 4 and win the Europa League with that squad, playing 3 games a week for 4 months. I think that's the big thing for me. So you can predict what you like. I think there's a very realistic chance that we won't have Champions League football next year, because I don't think you can go for top 4 and the Europa League, and when both of them are going to be really challenging. The race for top 4 is going to be between Liverpool, Spurs, Chelsea and us, because I think Arsenal and Man City have got it on lockdown. So you're going for a 4-way there, and then the Europa League, which you're going to be playing on Thursday nights, you're going to be fighting the likes of Barcelona, Arsenal, you know, and all those other teams I've mentioned. With the squad that we've got playing Thursday, Sunday, it's going to be very difficult. And I would say, on our day, we can beat anybody. But what do you prioritise when you hit March, April at the end of a very relentless season? You can't play your best team Thursday, Sunday. So I think it's going to be really, really interesting this season. And of course, it can impact other teams as well. But I think it's going to be very interesting. And it just highlights how challenging a lot of people. I think a lot of us came into this season and said it'd be nice to get top 4. But maybe we play Arsenal in the final for the Europa League for the chance to get in the Champions League. But I don't necessarily think it will be as an Arsenal in the Europa League final, because I think it'd be very difficult to get to the Europa League final. So lots to be excited about this season under Ten Hag, but lots to be realistic about. It's a very competitive Premier League top 6, and it's a very competitive Europa League that's shaping up. And with our squad, which I believe, and I might be in the minority, I believe our squad's quite thin. It's a difficult one, isn't it? It's going to be a very difficult one to see how it builds out. But I suppose that's exciting in many ways, but I do think it will be very difficult for Manchester United. Champions League's coming to Europa League, says Sim. Yeah. Who is better, Eric Ten Hag or Graham Potter, says Hamza. Imagine turning on a board that pay you ridiculous wages. Like, how would that even turn out, says Josh. Yeah, I mean, look, going back to the start of the video, there is a lot of, you know, if these players are really happy with Ten Hag and they don't want to turn on the manager, what happens when things start to go wrong? Are they suddenly going to go, let's not blame Ten Hag, let's blame the Glazers? How would that even work? You know, I guarantee it's in their contract. They can't even do that. It's pie in the sky talk anyway, because we've just beaten Everton. Things are looking good with United. I said this back in June, July. I said, the problem, Ten Hag won't have a problem till November, December, but he won't have a problem in November, December, because we'll have a World Cup. But what I meant by that is, players don't turn on a manager in the first 3 months. Players turn on a manager when results become consistent. and what I mean by that, probably consistently bad, and they're consistently not in the team. You look at Luke Shaw, probably wasn't happy that he wasn't in the team. He's got his place back. It's a short-term unhappiness. But what about the players in February who haven't been in the team for 6 months? We live in a results-based industry, and when you live in a results-based industry and you're part of a team, then ultimately, when you start to lose, a lot of people don't want to blame themselves. They start blaming others. We saw it last season at United. The players imploded on each other. They wanted to blame everybody else, whether it was the manager, whether it was each other. At the moment, there's a lot of positivity around Manchester United, and that's predominantly due to Erik ten Hag. Morning from Houston. Hope you get well soon, says Beryl. Thank you very much. And you need to take Echenia, says David. But look, we're a long way off on that. But, my message to any Man United player is, couldn't give a shit about what you think about whether you're going to turn on a manager or turn on a board. One, you'll never turn on the board. You will never publicly say Glazer's out. So, that's irrelevant. And two, you should never be turning on your manager anyway. It's not your job to turn on a manager. It's not your job to have a private conversation with Ed Woodward or Richard Arnold or John Murtagh. Your job is to be a Manchester United player, and it's a privileged position. You are paid to do it, and you can be kicked out of the club at any point. So all I want from Man United players, with all due respect, is consistency to perform each week in a Manchester United shirt. And we haven't got that. And we've not had that for years and years and years. So if I hear that a Man United player doesn't want to turn on the manager and they're going to look elsewhere to turn on if things go wrong, we haven't won a trophy in 5 years. If things start to go wrong at United, I can tell you where the problem is. We all know we need new owners, but if we're not good enough on the pitch to win trophies, it's because the players aren't good enough. And that might be because we've bought the wrong players and we've extended contracts on the wrong players. But to not win a trophy at Man United for 5 years reflects badly on the players. Of course, the managers have to take responsibility and the owners do, but those players aren't good enough. And if we start to struggle, like we did against Man City last week, we didn't really hear Glazers out. We heard, people said Ten Hag was naive, but ultimately the blame for Man City was the players, because they walked on the pitch just over a week ago and performed like they didn't give a shit, like they weren't prepared. So I think that's where we need to look at. I think the players played very well against Everton. They just need to focus on themselves, and unity is important. And it's good to hear that there's unity and they're behind the manager, but ultimately that unity needs to stay in the good and the bad times, and that's what we need to see. Corwin says, I honestly don't see any incoming transfers for January, so you may be onto something with us being stretched for numbers to compete in both Europa and achieving the top four. Well, let me know in the chat. I personally think we'll struggle to get top four. It's not impossible, but we'll struggle. I think, as I say, sometimes you have to break things down logically. Man City and Arsenal will get top four, in my opinion. I think Chelsea will as well, which leaves us, Spurs and Liverpool, which is a battle. We might win that battle, but it's a battle, and it's a hard battle. And then you've got the Europa League, where you've got a raft of good teams dropping down from the Champions League and some good teams in it already. And it's a long tournament if you've got to play that extra playoff if you finish second. So I genuinely just look at it and go, I know where the problems are. And let's not forget, up front, we've got Ronaldo, who's 37, and Martial, who's injury prone. You've got Sancho and Rashford off the left, and then you've got Anthony and Elanga off the right. That's not a lot of depth to play Thursday, Sunday after a long season. The midfield, we already know we're very reliant on Eriksen and Bruno. Can they play Thursday, Sunday every week? Then you're playing people like Fred and McTominay. The defence, can Varane and Martinez play Thursday, Sunday? Probably not. At least you do have Maguire and Lindelof, but that's a quality drop-off in my opinion. We're fine at left-back. Right-back, we've only got Delot. So my prediction right now is that Man United will not get top four and they will not win the Europa League, and we'll be back in the Europa League next year, hopefully better than we are this year, building under Ten Hag. If we get... But I'm still dangling the carrot, and what I'm saying is, if Ten Hag... It's not negative to say this. If Ten Hag gets Champions League football this year, I'll be massively impressed. Massively impressed. Because it's probably harder to get Champions League football this year than it has been for the last 5. It's really competitive. Like, there are 6 teams that can get top 4 this year, and 2 of them are going to be massively disappointed. If I said to you that Liverpool and Spurs miss out on Champions League football for us to get it, that's big news. So it's going to be very, very, very difficult, and it's going to be very difficult to win the Europa League. If we had a squad of 22 players that were decent, I'd fancy us, but we don't. So it's going to be very, very difficult. And all I'm saying is I don't think we'll get Champions League football right here, right now, because I can see this squad is not deep enough to go Thursday, Sunday for 9 months. If we do, I wouldn't give him a statue, but I'd be saying he probably deserves Manager of the Year. It's going to be very, very difficult for him to do it. Of course, that can change. If the club are going to buy him a couple of players in January, that changes. But that's one of the things that worries me. I know for a fact Chelsea are buying players in January. I know Arsenal are looking to buy players in January. I suspect Liverpool will because of the mess they're in. I don't think Man City need to. I'm not so sure Spurs will, although they did last year. If we're not spending in January and everyone else is, we're in big trouble. So, look, you've got to be realistic. Now, with teams like Barcelona, Atletico, Ajax, Milan, Juventus coming to Europa, Ronaldo have more desire to play Europa as competition motivates him. It should motivate our squad, says Supper. Massive shout out to Renate for gifting 10 memberships, by the way. Welcome to Dylan, who's a new member. And of all the games we got and teams we have, the priority, I think we should focus Europa League to get a chance at Champions League. It's easier than top four, says Trigger. Well, I've said this before and I will say it again. If we don't buy anybody in January... Ehab, why have you put Harry Maguire, love? Something happened. If we don't buy any players in January, then I think that we will need to prioritise one or two of those tournaments. Now, a manager will never say that, but if we don't get players in January, then I think we cannot go Thursday, Sunday, February, March, April, May. That's 4 months with that squad. So I think you would have to be pragmatic. But as we know with Erik ten Hag, he said he wants to win every single game. So, you know, I think that I think it'd be very interesting to see what happens. But look, you've got to be realistic. But one other thing that Erik ten Hag says is that we just have to take every game as it comes. And there is an opportunity over the next... Look, I'll be honest with you. I think that by the time we break for the World Cup in, 4 weeks' time, we'll have a very good idea of what this squad is capable of. We've got Newcastle in the league, then we've got Spurs, Chelsea, and... I think those next 3 games will decide a lot, realistically. Newcastle at home, Spurs at home, and then Chelsea away. If we can take 7 points from that... I think it puts us firmly in the race for top 4. If we take anything less than 5, I think you know it's going to be a challenging season. So it's got better as I've talked. Actually, I'm feeling a bit more positive now. We seem to have calmed the cough, so maybe a little bit more rest and we'll be all right. But we're going to have to get lucky with injuries, says Fruitless Gardener, and it will be a learning experience for Eric. And I think Bolver makes a great point there. It's so difficult for Erik ten Hag this season. He's taking on the worst Man United side in Premier League history. They've given him a lot of money, but they've overspent on a lot of players, which inflates the money that's been spent. I can't stand it when people say ten Hag's been given 200 million quid. It's baseless headline bullshit. Because 200 million pounds makes it sound like he's been given 200 million pounds, and he hasn't technically. We've overpaid on a lot of players. 150 million quid is what he's been given. They've just overpaid on players. So this headline of he's had 200 million quid, I think it's unfair because we overpaid on a lot of players. So he's inherited the worst Man United Premier League side ever. And we're in the most competitive top 6 race, I think, in many years because Liverpool have stumbled and Chelsea have stumbled. But they both have the potential to get back in the top 4. Arsenal are exceeding expectation. Man City are Man City. So very, very competitive. And then the Europa League is going to be very competitive. And it's his first season as well. Gideon, welcome to the Members Club. So I do think that it's great. You know, I love Ten Hag. I want him to do well. I know you do. But I don't think Mourinho had it this hard in his first season. I don't think Solskjaer did. I don't think Van Gaal did. I definitely would argue with anyone that since Sir Alex Ferguson left, this is the hardest season there's been in the Premier League for a Man United manager. And yet it's Ten Hag's first season. So, you know, he effectively, we could get knocked out in the Europa League in the quarterfinals, win nothing and finish 5th. And it would still be a good season. And on paper, that's a terrible season. But in the context of how challenging this season's going to be. And I wouldn't underestimate the fact that the squad isn't strong. And whose fault that is has to reflect on the board. Of course it does. But we haven't even got a backup right back that he would like to use. So I think it's going to be a very, very, very interesting season. Very exciting. I mean, you know me. I'd rather play Liverpool every week than play Fulham. I think that you learn more when you play the better teams, and it excites me that the Europa League is going to be difficult. I look at that Europa League and it excites me. It excites me that the top 4 race is going to be difficult, but of course, it being difficult makes the job more difficult. Lath says they're pretending not to buy in January just because recruitment is so bad. If they buy someone, then it's a win. If they don't, then it's as they said. That just means no pressure on the board. I do think, I agree with that. I do think we're going to buy in January, because I think if we don't buy in January, it will stand out as incompetence on a major level. Chelsea will buy. I think Arsenal will buy. I think Liverpool will buy. Spurs, I'm not so sure. I don't think Man City need to. But 3 of the big competitors for top 4, I think, are going to buy. And if we stand still, it makes us look bad. I think Newcastle will buy as well. So, yeah. Anyway, look, thanks, everyone. We've got through it. Not been too bad in the last 10 minutes. So, fingers crossed, a bit more rest. And might be all right for the watch-along tonight. But we need to go and rest up a bit, don't we? Josh Dude has just gifted 20 memberships. You're an absolute legend, you and Renate. That means 30 of you have got some memberships today. Absolutely fantastic. Josh Dude says that's for the chat. Big up there. Vinay's a new member as well. Thanks, everyone. We've got a great community. Thanks, everyone who's actually concerned about me. I really appreciate that. I probably wouldn't have done this show if I knew the cough was going to kick in. I thought it was okay. But we've battled through it. And I'm glad we did, because there was a lot of stuff I wanted to talk about in the show today. And I think there are some good stuff in there. So I enjoyed the show this morning. So apart from the coughing fit, there's some interesting points there. And I think the overarching thing for me is that it's not negative to highlight what a difficult job it is for Erik ten Hag. I don't think we'll get top 4, and I don't think we'll win the Europa League. But that won't make it a bad season when you look at the context of we're coming off the worst Premier League season we've ever had. That squad still needs a lot of work. I still think that squad's quite weak in major areas. And I think it's virtually impossible to go for top 4 and the Europa League playing 3 games a week with that squad. I think it's very, very almost impossible to do that. But is it possible to prioritise one over the other? I don't know. It's going to be a very interesting season. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care. Smash the like on the video. Make sure you subscribe. We'll be back later on. It's match day. Speak to you in a bit.